I wanted to take just a few minutes to go over the Essay 2 topic page for your literary analysis essay. So for this essay, you will have two options. The first says this: one of the most revealing types of conflict occurs when a character's inner struggles are resolved at great personal price. Often, the character learns a lesson, but too late to help himself or another character. Explain how, in the end plays itself out, a character struggles but fails to learn a lesson in time, and thus serves as an example for the reader. In your essay, focus on the conflict within the character. Be sure to include the price paid as part of the resolution and the lesson to be learned. To be clear, the type of conflict mentioned here is that of the literary kind, self versus self. In other words, the character is struggling with internal issues. So if I'm looking at this prompt, there's a variety of things I need to consider. First, I'm focusing solely on the story, the end plays out itself. I'm looking at Snoozy Q's internal conflict, and I have to consider what lesson Snoozy Q ultimately earns and what price is paid as a result of having to learn this lesson. It's important that we understand that when we are writing our thesis statements to support this prompt, we have to address each of these elements of the prompt, okay? Now let's look at option 2. The end plays out itself, and I'm down here on the floor, deal with complex themes. Choose one of these two stories and identify the primary theme of that story. Then, write an analysis essay exploring how the author develops the theme through the use of setting, characters, literary conflict, or point of view. To be clear, you do not need to address each of these elements. You may choose, for example, to only look at how the author uses the characters to develop the theme. Additionally, it's imperative you correctly identify the theme to do well on this essay. So, when you're looking at this one, you're going to choose one of the two stories and one of the literary elements listed. So, one story, one literary element, to discuss how the writer of the story is developing the theme of the story. I want to make a couple of notes though, particularly when it comes to looking at characters. If you choose this route, say you're going to really look in at Snoozy Q and the man in the McDonald's, that would be okay, but you have to do it through the lens of character development. Additionally, if you're looking at literary conflict, while you might choose one particular variety of literary conflict, like self versus self, so that internal conflict, if I'm down here on the floor, I might want to talk about how self versus society has created a self versus self conflict, which leads us to one of the complex themes or messages from the story. All right, an important note. For each body paragraph, you will want to choose specific quotes or passages from the story to support your claims, but you want to avoid excessive plot summary. In other words, be sure to avoid simply retelling what's happened in the story. You should assume your reader has read the story. As such, there is no need to summarize the plot. This is the biggest pitfall students have with this particular essay. They start summarizing what happened in the story. Your reader knows what happens. You do not need to provide all of those details. What you need to hone in on is the context related to the specific example you're providing. You only need to tell your reader enough to understand what point you're trying to make. A few basic requirements. You have a word count minimum of 1,000 words. If you are under 1,000 words, you will not do well on this essay. You will need 1,500 word maximum. I will not read beyond 1,500 words. Understand your word count is not impacted by your header, heading, title, citations, or works cited page. You are required at least 6 total paragraphs: an introductory paragraph, 4 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. You are required a thesis statement that clearly presents your analytical argument regarding the work and that fully addresses the prompt. This is what I was talking about earlier when I was going over those prompts. You want to make sure your thesis statement answers any questions within the prompt that are there, and all questions that are within the prompt. Worth noting, thesis statements should be limited for short papers to 1 sentence, which means you have to figure out a way, that's kind of the puzzle of this, figure out a way to answer the prompt that might be multifaceted in that 1 sentence. All body paragraphs will include a topic sentence that demonstrates a clear relationship with the thesis and a provable point that will be proven through at least 2 pieces of evidence from the story. So this is a key detail here. You will have a topic sentence. Topic sentences are sentences that indicate what the paragraph's going to be about, what argument you're making in the paragraph, the analytical point you're making, and it's going to have a clear relationship with that thesis. In addition to that, that body paragraph is going to have at least two pieces of evidence. For a literary analysis, you should be using quotes from the story. You are required at least two. When choosing evidence for each paragraph, it's best to use quotes from the story. Those quotes should be integrated with a signal phrase, concise quote, in-text citation, explanation of how the quote proves the point you're trying to prove. You need to choose good quotes that actually illustrate the point you're trying to make. I provided you resources for in-text citations, MLA format, using third-person point of view, because that is a requirement for this essay. You're not allowed to use I, me, my, we, our. You will talk about the reader, the writer. You might say they, or he or she, but you're not going to use first and second person points of view when writing this. You'll also want to maintain the literary present tense, which means even though the story might have happened in the past, you will write about it as it's happening now. We've talked about this briefly. I've also provided due dates as well as some formal writing guidelines and a link to the Essay Writer's Toolbox. So if we click on the Essay Writer's Toolbox, I brought this to your attention earlier in the term. You will find pages that provide details about a lot of the different writing things that will be of use to you here. So you are going to be using quotes from the story. So you might want to go to the page that says integrating quotes. And there's a video where I talk about how to do this effectively. There's also links to other pages about integrating quotes. Other things you might want to look at, if you're not great with thesis statements or you don't really understand what topic sentences are, go in, have a look at the video that has been provided to you, as well as links to other pages that might be helpful to you. Now I want to take just a moment and look at one of the sample essays. While I'm not going to read this full essay to you, I want to draw your attention to it because it is a successful paper. It's successfully set up in MLA format. We have an introductory paragraph that starts broad and then narrows to a thesis. The thesis is this last sentence, and it says, Eldredge uses the physical object of the red convertible to symbolize the freedom, innocence, and brotherhood in Henry and Lyman's relationship, leaving readers with the notion that gradual loss of innocence is an inevitable part of growing up, and once it's gone forever. So here, we're seeing a couple of nice things that this student is doing. He is letting us know what the symbol is. He had a different prompt than what you all are writing about. What the symbol is, what it symbolizes, how it's being symbolized, and then what impact that's having on the reader. Here's the thing you have to think about with the literary analysis essay. Part of doing this successfully means bringing it back to the impact on the reader. You don't ever want to forget the impact of the story, what the writer is doing on the reader. He also is taking a position with the relationship between the car and the brothers, which is a position that I don't quite hold, but he does it successfully, and I'm happy with what he does. So he gets into his body paragraphs. As the story begins, Eldredge shows readers that the red convertible represents Henry and Lyman's freedom and innocence. So we can see here that our student has made a point in this first body paragraph's topic sentence that directly connects to the thesis. It talks about Henry and Lyman, talks about freedom and innocence. It's related to how the red convertible represents that. So there's a very clear connection, and we know this paragraph is going to focus in on the two brothers' freedom and innocence as presented through the red convertible. Then the student provides examples from the story. Eldredge states, some people hang on to details when they travel, but we didn't let that bother us and just lived for our everyday lives here to there. Then he's going to explain it. Readers, again, bringing it to the readers. Readers get the sense that the brothers are living in the moment, employing the car as their vehicle, both literally and figuratively. This affords them the freedom to travel wherever and whenever they wish, and so on and so forth. Then he's going to give us a second example and explain the importance of that. Another thing he does very nicely here is transition from idea to idea. So at the end of his his paragraph, he's going to say, by avoiding the possibility of identifying any mechanical problems with their beloved red convertible, they can continue to pursue the open possibility that strengthens their brotherhood, a brotherhood that's supported by their combined ownership of the red convertible. Then our very next sentence is going to say, as the story progresses, readers see several indicators that the purchase of and ownership of the red convertible strengthen Henry and Lyman's bond as brothers. Then in this paragraph, he's going to explore that with 2 examples. Then he'll transition from this idea to the next. The dynamic of the brothers' relationship changes when Henry returns from war. So he's making a very clear statement. Again, it's connected to our thesis, and it's going to be illustrated through his examples and explanation. Then he talks about the end and Lyman's decision to let the car die with his brother. He's going to dig into that, the meaning of that. He has his examples, he's explaining them, and he closes out very nicely at the end saying, Louise Erdrich uses the symbolism of the red convertible to parallel the evolution of the relationship between Henry and Lyman, founded on the values of freedom, brotherhood, and innocence. When Lyman attempts to save the relationship by damaging the convertible, readers see a momentary change in Henry that inspires hope in Lyman. Ultimately, readers are faced with the fact that the principles that the red convertible symbolizes are gone forever, and so too is Henry. It's only fitting that Lyman pushes the car into the river after Henry drowns, realizing that, after all, the car does belong to Henry, allowing Erdrich to convey the idea that once innocence is gone, it's gone forever. So here we see the student really making the larger point of this car was a symbol for this brotherhood. And the reason this works for me, why this essay does well, is that even though the student is linking the car to the brothers' relationship very closely, he ultimately gets to the actual truth of the story, which is that the Henry and the car are inextricably linked, that the Henry of it all and the car of it all are the 2 pieces that are really working together here, even more so than that brotherhood relationship with the car. There's brotherhood, there's the car, but the car is linked more closely to one of the brothers than the other. But he does a really nice job here. He's being very thoughtful. He's supporting his ideas with clear evidence from the story that he's fully explaining. I encourage you to look at this essay very closely. Then he has his works cited page. There are 2 other sample essays. I'm not going to go through those. They're both good examples. I think the first one, if you only have time to look at one, look at this first one on the red convertible. It will help inform you as you're thinking through how to approach this essay. The next thing I'm going to take a moment with is a sample outline. This is a sample outline that I wrote for a symbolism prompt related to the story Snow. It was, again, this is not something you would be writing about, but I go through, I provide a thesis statement, and then topic sentences that support the thesis. So I say in Snow, Beatty likens snow to love in both its beauty and ephemeral nature, leaving readers with the notion, even when lost, love should be cherished. Then my topic sentence, through the narrator's memories of living in the country with her former partner, Beatty establishes the comparison of love and snow. So I'm very quickly getting to, this is what the symbol is. Then I provide evidence. Then my next paragraph, as the story progresses, so does the lens through which readers understand the complexities of both love and snow. So I'm continuing to explore how this symbol has been developed and connected between the snow and how that points to love. Then in my third paragraph, while the narrator ultimately loses the love she shared with her partner, it is evident through the function of snow as a symbol, she values the time she spent with her former lover. So we're getting to the point here that even though she's lost the love, it doesn't change the fact that the love was important. And then topic sentence 4, readers are left with the understanding, though love, like snow, doesn't last, it should be cherished. So I get really into the point of what I'm saying in my thesis statement. Then I have a conclusion. It's a little bit underdeveloped. That's fine. Later on, it'll be addressed. I will come back in a later video and talk about moving this essay from outline to rough draft so that you can see what that process should look like. I know that literary analysis writing or outlining is not something that a lot of you have historically done with your writing. So I want to provide a guide for you. So keep an eye out for that. And then the final thing that I'm providing evidence here for you is not evidence, but examples of for you is is the essay rubric so that you know how you'll be graded. This rubric is a 100-point rubric. Yours is only going to be a 15-point rubric, but it's the exact same rubric otherwise. So I wanted you to have a look at it. What you'll notice is that your rubric is divided into 5 basic sections. Structure, which encompasses thesis, introduction, topic sentences, and conclusion, and that'll be worth 20% of your grade. I encourage you to go in and read the rubric. I do a pretty good job of telling you this will earn full credit. This earns partial credit. For example, if we're looking at the topic sentences one, if your topic sentences are not functioning properly, or they're statements of fact, questions, or they include evidence, you're not going to get credit for those topic sentences because they're not doing what they're supposed to. So knowing what I'm looking for is probably pretty important to you. The next section is content, which will be divided between evidence and interpretation of that evidence. So it needs to be that you picked good evidence that clearly supports your thesis and topic sentences, and also that you're fully explaining it in a way that makes sense. The next section is cohesion and thoughtfulness. This is going to look at your organization, your flow, and your use of language. These first 3 sections are all really founded in how you've structured your essay, how you've organized your essay, and if the content you provided is working. So they work very closely together. For example, if your thesis statement and topic sentences are not aligned, if they're a mess, then your organization is probably not doing well, right? If you don't have effective topic sentences, it's hard to have body paragraphs with that content and evidence, your interpretation, evidence and interpretation that's going to be effective. So it's important understanding those relationships. Then, after that, we get into the MLA of it all. You will have, that'll be 20% of your grade. You'll have your MLA format, your quote formatting and in-text citations, and then your MLA works cited page. We will talk about how this should look at a later time. But this is 20% of your grade, and it's really going to be our first pass at citing in text and with a works cited page. Your previous essay didn't do that. This essay will be us dipping our toe into that to prep for our later essay, which is the research essay, where MLA, while I'm not super strict on your getting your citations right here, I want to see that I'll take off points if you have errors, but I wouldn't take off as many as I might on your research essay, where I'm really looking very closely at how you are citing and using your sources, where for this one, I want to see that you are doing your best. You are trying to get it right. And then grammar and mechanics is worth 20% of your grade. For your personal narrative essay, while I was grading those, or while I am grading those, I'm looking at your grammar mechanics. I'm calling out places where you could improve. You might even lose points on grammar and mechanics, but you might, for your personal narrative, you will lose fewer points if you have a ton of errors than you would on this essay. The expectation is that you will become stronger. The first essay is more diagnostic for grammar and mechanics. Here, I'm evaluating your use of grammar and mechanics. In your later essay, I will be evaluating that more closely. I hope this video has helped you understand what this assignment is asking of you. If you have questions, I know this is a lot. I know for some of you, this is outside of the realm of what you usually write, what your writing usually does. So please reach out to me if I can be of help to you.